Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video, we're going to be replacing the upstream and downstream of the O2 sensors in a 2010 Toyota Corolla. This is for the 2009 to 2013, and I'm going to have links to all the parts, all the tools and everything in the description down below. So definitely go check those out, and especially the tools, you definitely need some specific ones for this job, and they're actually pretty cheap. All right, so right here we have the downstream and the upstream of both the O2 sensors. This one does have wires. You're gonna have to wire it in, but it's actually apparently not too bad. This one's just a plug and play, but it does have this heat shielding, and this is where this first tool comes in handy. It's a thin wall socket. You're gonna need this to be able to kind of slide that in there to be able to turn it and kind of secure it. This little kit actually comes with, I mean, honestly, these are some of like the best tools right here to be able to pop off the O2 sensors. They are located on the exhaust and they get like really stuck on there. This sleeve for this specific car is actually a little too thick. It's actually really nice and heavy duty, but it's a little too thick for the Toyota Corolla. So that's why I suggest picking up this one, because it just barely fits. But this kit is actually great for pretty much any O2 sensors in any car. So it'll be good to have that in the future. But like I said, there's going to be links to all these in the description down below. The Denso ones are actually the OEM ones. So they are also on Amazon, and that's actually where I picked these up. So if you guys are wanting like OEM parts, or at least as close as possible, the Denso ones are the actual OEM ones. So let's go ahead and get started with this. So the first one, the downstream, I would say is probably easier to get to. And you can kind of see it right there. It's hooked into the exhaust. And then it actually goes up under the floor by the driver's side. So I figured to go ahead and kind of do that first, since it's a lot easier. And whenever you get to the inside where the plug comes up through, it actually comes through like right around here. So we're going to go ahead and remove this panel. This side has two clips, so just pull it straight out. I actually hold on to this side kind of with my thumb, and I pull it straight out. So those unhook right there. And then that side, it just slides straight back because it's just like a little tab. So we can go ahead and set this aside. And then we're going to come under here. And let's see, right here where that gray plug is, so not these wires, but this gray plug right here, there's a little tab on the bottom. So we're going to push that little tab on the bottom and slide this right off. All right, and there we go. So now we got that off, and there's a little kind of round tab that the carpet kind of goes up and hooks onto, kind of up underneath here. I don't even know if I can really get the camera up in there to show, but once you kind of pop that off, you can kind of pull this out, and you can kind of see where this like loops around that little round piece. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the carpet back a little bit, actually kind of pull back a lot, and right there you can kind of follow the cord down and follow it down onto the floor. So we're going to go ahead and kind of just take that, make sure that it's kind of loose, because I'm just going to go ahead and pull it out from the underside once we get there. So now that everything's kind of setting lightly, we're going to go ahead and go under the car and remove the actual O2 sensor. All right, so now that we're under here looking at the O2 sensor, there's actually going to be this little piece right here that kind of hooks onto it. So we're actually going to pop this off of the O2 sensor itself. There we go, kind of grab it from the back side. And then we just take it off of the wire here. So we're just going to go ahead and set that aside, and now that that exposed that, we can go ahead and hook up the tools and be able to pull off the O2 sensor. All right, so now that we're under here, we can go ahead and open our little tool kit, and I suggest using this tool, the longer one, because it does kind of have like that bigger kind of star design, and we can actually hook in a breaker bar, because we're probably going to need the extra leverage of a long breaker bar to be able to bust this off, because they do get kind of seized on there really well, especially since the exhaust gets really hot and then it just kind of like roasts that part on. So with this, the reason it has that slot is you can kind of stick it over the wires, and then you can kind of run it down in place. And I suggest kind of getting it as kind of like the down position so you can get better leverage. And then you're going to essentially hook on your breaker bar, and then you're just going to try to pop it off with a decent amount of force. All right, so now that I got mine kind of broken loose, we can kind of pull this, kind of start unscrewing it a bit. And I actually suggest pulling that one off. And since we have a couple tools with this little kit, going ahead and using the other one that just has the little hole right there, which is kind of like a little square. You can hook on a regular little ratchet and get this thing off a lot easier. All right, so actually I think that's pretty loose. Yep, we can kind of get it. It's kind of hand tied at this point. Now let's unscrew that from the exhaust. And we can go ahead and pop off this little bracket as well. So might actually get a little pry tool and pop that out. All right, just get underneath that. And just kind of pop that out. There is also going to be a link in the description down below for some pry tools. They are great for pretty much any job that you're going to be working on. So that was actually pretty easy. So now we can kind of see how that works. There's a little lever on the back side right there. So we can probably just kind of pop up that lever and then take that off. But I'm just going to go ahead and do that last. But I'm just going to go ahead and continue to unscrew the O2 sensor, and out it comes. There's actually not too bad. I think just breaking it loose is the hardest part. I can do it off camera because it took me a little bit. Now we can just kind of pop this out. So it's just kind of like a rubber seal. So just kind of be careful with that. And they should be able to just kind of pull this whole thing right out. And then I'm just going to kind of push up. You can kind of see like the foam insulation, and there's the plug. So now with the new one, it actually has you like rewire it to this. So I guess what we're going to do is probably cut this and or probably cut it somewhere like down here, and then be able to reuse this whole side and this whole plug. All right, so when you're looking at the old O2 sensor, you have this huge cable. This right here is where it goes kind of in the car. So everything on this side is actually inside the car to the plug. So the length of this right here is just long enough that you can pretty much kind of rig it up right below the stopper, but this is on the outside of the car. I would rather have kind of like where I splice all these on the inside. So I'm going to try to shift this kind of down a little bit, do everything in here, and there should be just enough wire that I can still plug into the exhaust, and that can still go under the spot to kind of go into the hole, because I'd rather have all this kind of inside on the back side of this kind of rubber seal. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of figure out where to cut this, and then obviously there's two black lines, a white and a blue. You just hook them all up, just kind of match the colors. It's super easy. The instructions there's even instructions with it, and it kind of tells you how to do everything, so it's kind of easy to follow along if you're not too sure. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this out, and then I even got some electrical tape just to kind of wrap everything up. It does come with these little rubber sleeves. Once you kind of get everything hooked up, you can kind of put all these sleeves on, and everything's going to be like all nice and good to go. And then it does have these to crimp, but I don't have a crimper, so I'm kind of curious if I can use a pair of pliers. All right, so I went ahead and cut the old wires, so now we can just kind of go ahead and get rid of the old one, and went ahead and slid that off. So you have these wires and these ones. So I'm going to try to slide this kind of over the new one to where these are exposed on this side, hook up all those, and then be able to slide this kind of back over that, so all that's kind of protected and kind of sitting right down in this little housing, so that all of this will be on the outside of the car, where they're spliced together will technically be on the inside of the car. And then we can actually slide these on, and then they have the little heat shielding that you can put over those afterwards, and then use a heat gun. And then I'm still going to wrap everything in a decent amount of electrical tape, and then probably wrap even more electrical tape around everything else. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and knock that out now. So I don't want to say I'm not the best person to go to for kind of splicing advice. I did say to kind of do these at different lengths so that they're not all like obviously connected all close to each other, just so you can kind of minimize chances of shorts if something's not sealed up properly. But that's why I'm going to use a lot of electrical tape. But also I just kind of have like limited wire length. So I went ahead and got this on here. I got all these kind of prepped, as you can see. And then I guess with these, we just slide each wire kind of into that, and that's where they'll kind of like cross and kind of connect. And then we'll actually go ahead and slide these on first. So once we get those hooked up, we can just slide these kind of back over the connection and then hit it with the heat gun. And then once I have that, then I'm going to wrap it up with the electrical tape so that everything is all wrapped up. And I'm going to put a lot of tape on either side just to help kind of minimize chances of any exposed wires, especially because you don't want like two of these like kind of connections to come together or anything. But this is how I'm doing it. This might not be the best way to do it, but this is how I'm doing it. So just a little disclaimer. All right, so I went ahead and got one on there, slid the little piece on, slid the wire on either side, and actually used my channel locks to then kind of crimp that wire. I don't know if you can really see it, and it's actually kind of holding pretty nice. So then I can go ahead and slide this little sleeve over that, hit it with the heat gun, and then kind of seal that up. And then I'm going to wrap electrical tape probably from like here all the way over, just in case. And then it kind of keeps them all separated. All right, so now I got all those like little metal sleeves kind of on there and crimped, and I actually think that those look really good. There we go, kind of focused there. And I just used the channel locks and just kind of got each side and just kind of crimped it, and I think those look really nice. So we're gonna go ahead and slide these sleeves over and then wrap everything with electrical tape, but I'll catch back up with you guys once I kind of have everything kind of finished and cleaned up. All right, so I went ahead and slid all these kind of heat shrink kind of things over top. I went ahead and hit this one. I don't know if you can kind of tell. It honestly looks like there's like a clear, let me try to get my hand back here for a better focus. It honestly kind of looks like there's like a clear kind of gel or something that is kind of coming out from the inside. There you can kind of see it like on the edge of the white wire there. And it didn't really shrink like normal shrink wraps typically do. Kind of see how it did a little bit, but not too much. So I'm wondering if there's like a glue layer on the inside of these and it shrinks a little bit and melts that glue to kind of seal it. I think that's kind of cool if that's the case. All right, so I went ahead and I wrapped each connection up with electrical tape, and then I went through and kind of wrapped the whole cluster so it actually looks really nice. And then once I slide this over, it should all kind of sit right kind of inside of that. Well, actually I had a little bit extra slack in the wire, but I think this actually does look really good. This will all be on the outside of the car, and then this is kind of what hangs down, and then all this will be inside the car, and then obviously that would go and plug in. So I'm going to go ahead and get this all set up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and take the O2 sensor that's now all rigged up. Like, we're going to hand screw it first. Just got to be careful not to like hit it on anything. Gonna make sure it's not cross-threaded. All right, screwing in nice and easy. And I left this purposely hanging out so you can kind of twist with the whole O2 sensor. And now that we have it all nice and snug, I'm gonna go ahead and tighten it down. There we go. Let's pop this off and that. And then we do have plenty of room to be able to get that to go right back up in there. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of poke to kind of lift up the carpeting, and then get that wire kind of pushed up in there. So that looks good to go. And we're going to go ahead and take this little clip that we previously had on there, and we're going to go ahead and kind of get it around the wire here and hook that back through. Don't want to tighten it too tight just yet. And then just kind of pop that into place, and then now I kind of get a little bit tighter. All right, just like that, the O2 sensor on the downstream is installed. So now what we're gonna do is go ahead and go on the inside of the car, and we're gonna go ahead and kind of get that kind of rewired back through and plugged in. All right, so now we gotta lower the car down because we need to get to the other O2 sensor, which is located behind the engine. So having it raised up so high is kind of hard to get to. So let's go ahead and lower that. Man, I love these quick jacks. It is a little slow, but it still makes life a lot easier. I figure we can just go ahead and drop it all the way down to the ground. All right, so then the upstream O2 sensor is kind of located, I don't know if you can kind of see down in there. There's like that little red piece of tape. It's actually just below that. That actually does look like the wire for it, so the plug I would assume would be right there. But in order to really kind of get through to that area, we will need to take off the top part of the air box. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and take off this cover as well. It literally just lifts right up and off. There we go. There's like 4 connections on it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off and then take the air box off. There we go. There's a little tab right here. And then there's like the same kind of tab on this side. There we go. So then there's that tab right there. That pops off, and then you can go ahead and take off the whole air box. There we go. We can kind of move this out of the way. You probably could actually unhook it right here, so I'll probably go ahead and do that. So let me go ahead and unclip that and pull kind of like this whole thing off. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of pull that cover off all the way. There we go. Let's go ahead and set it aside. All right, so now let me go ahead and unscrew this little clamp right here. Now the air box is off. Let me actually just kind of set it off to the side because I don't really need to like unplug the MAP sensor or anything. So now we should be able to go right into here where we need to go. And right there is the O2 sensor. I'll just kind of put my light here on the air filter. I'm sure that's fine. And then the O2 sensor is right down here. I don't know if you can actually see it right there. It's actually that piece right there. And then where like the little red tape is, it's actually the cord. And then right up behind the engine, there's actually the plug for it. All right, so let me try to show it down in there. So you can kind of see right there is your O2 sensor. Obviously you can kind of see where my finger's at. The red is where the wire comes up. There's this little wire bracket. I don't know if it's really focusing on it. It's actually like kind of like right where that red wire is, or red tape is. You can see a little tiny wire next to it. So you can actually kind of pop that off. It's like a little, kind of like a little mounting bracket wire. And then whenever you come up here, right behind the engine is the plug right there. So on the kind of passenger side of the car, there's like a little kind of tab that you can push on it. Kind of right off on this side, kind of push here and then pull straight down with the cable connection. Go ahead and pop the wire off that little kind of mounting bracket. And let me get a good grip on the left side of this plug, and there we go. So now we went ahead and got that unplugged. So I'm just gonna set that right there out of the way. And let's go ahead. The heat shielding on the original one's actually really short. So the new one will have a way taller heat shielding. But let's go ahead and grab our tools and get down in there and get that out. So I have a little red box that did have this giant socket right here. It will not fit with the new one, but it actually fits to take the old one off. And since this is a lot thicker of a wall, a lot more sturdy, I'm gonna go ahead and use this to kind of like break that off in case I need to use a little bit more force. And then I'll use the other one, like the thin wall, whenever we're installing the new one. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and go down, stick the socket in place on the O2 sensor. All right, so we're trying something crazy. So we got the socket on there. We got the 3/8 right here with the little kind of pivot. And then we actually have a 3/8 to 1/2, so I can use this big breaker bar. And if I need to use the extra force, I can kind of break it loose with this. So let me go ahead and get this all hooked up down inside of there and see if this works. All right, so it's actually hooked up. And let's see if I can actually break it loose with this. All right, let's see. I think it might have actually popped it. I think we got it. That sounded really bad, but I think we did break it loose. Let's go ahead and pop all this out. Yeah, so all this is great and intact. I thought, like, honestly, kind of thought the joint broke, but that's actually in perfect condition. So now let's go in there and yep, the O2 sensor is loose. So let me go ahead and pop off the socket. Actually, it's kind of stuck on there. Let me just go ahead and unscrew the O2 sensor. There we go, and just pull it up out of there, and boom, there's the O2 sensor with the, kind of see like that sleeve, the heat shielding sleeve right there. And then there's the cable kind of coming out the back. So it's actually kind of stuck in the socket. There we go. So that right there, that looks rough. All right, so we have the old one right here, which you can kind of see looks really bad. And then we got the new one, which looks way nicer. Also, the heat shielding is a lot bigger. Everything else on it looks pretty identical. It already has some like anti-seize kind of gel on the threads itself. And obviously like the base of it kind of has like that bigger heat shielding, which that's why I do suggest you get one of these, because the one that comes with the O2 sensor toolkit does not have one that's this thin of the sidewall. So this will actually be able to get right up inside of there, and then we can hook it on to the new O2 sensor and get it screwed into place. So I'm going to go ahead and set the old one aside, which is pretty roasted, and get the new one screwed in place. So let me set this stuff out of the way. Go ahead and hand tighten this. Went ahead and got that nice and hand tight. Let me go ahead and take this socket tool and stick it in place. And boom, so there we go. So I got the whole breaker bar kind of out, and now let's go ahead and tighten it. All right, so now that I have the O2 sensor nice and tight, we're actually going to go ahead and run the wire up. I'm gonna go ahead and plug it into the connection. So now we're gonna go ahead and put the air box back in place, and this should be fairly quick. All right, just like that, everything is all back together. I'm gonna go ahead and take the engine cover and pop it right back into place, and we are done. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and just take the car for like a little drive around the block, kind of in the neighborhood, just to make sure that everything's running nice and smooth. I don't know if the car really needs to like calibrate or anything, but I'm pretty sure you just plug it in and everything's good to go. So if you guys want, there's gonna be links for everything down in the description down below for all the different tools I use, for the parts I use, especially the Denso ones, since they are the actual ones from Toyota. So if you guys are interested in all those parts, tools, links down in the description down below, and even the quick jacks to make your life a lot easier, especially for this project and a lot of other future projects. But if you guys did like this video, if I was able to help you guys out, definitely put down in the comments down below what you guys think. Also, if you have any other questions or anything, just put them down there, let me know, and I'll answer them the best I can. But if you guys like the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already. But as always, thank you for watching.